Chapter 9. The Quiet Bloom of Nyasha. She had always been the smaller shadow. Jabari was the loud one, the question box, the storyteller, the one who sat at the fire and demanded to know why stars don't fall and why some leaves curl toward the moon. But Nyasha observed. She watched the way spiders repaired webs after rain, how people's voices changed when they were scared or tired. She knew which chickens laid the quiet eggs, and which ants could carry the most grain. But lately, she had started asking question. "Mama, what is my work?" Amina looked up from the mint patch when Nyasha asked it again. "What is my work in the garden?" Amina thought for a moment, brushing soil from her hands. "Well, baby, your work is listening to what the plants are telling us." Nyasha frowned. "But they don't talk like people." "No, they talk like you." Nyasha blinked. "Like me?" "Exactly like you, soft, small, but with roots that go deep." That afternoon, Nyasha sat with the lemongrass for nearly an hour. Not speaking, just being. Her fingers brushed each blade gently. Her lips moved in silence. When she returned to the house, she announced, "The lemongrass said I can grow sideways and still be strong." Layla, who had been watching the child closely for weeks now, gifted her an old notebook with faded sunflowers on the cover. "It used to be for my recipes. I think it wants a new story now." Nyasha opened to the first page and began to draw not just flowers or animals, but feelings. A picture of a bird with 2 big wings. A mango with thunder inside it. A girl with roots for hair, dancing under the soil. Each day she added more. She did not explain them. She simply handed them to Amina, to Lindiwe, to Bibi Layla, one by one. When Jabari tried to guess what they meant, she only shrugged. "It's not guessing work, it's knowing work." One night when Nyasha couldn't sleep, she sat by the window, looking at the sky. The rain had stopped, but thunder still grumbled on the horizon. The house creaked, full of heavy dreams. She tiptoed to the door and stepped outside barefoot. The garden glowed with moonlight. Basil leaves shimmered like silver fish. The guava tree swayed gently, like it was breathing. Nyasha walked to the marigolds planted around the land protest stakes. She whispered, "Will you still grow if they hurt us?" And in the wind, something whispered back, not in words but in feeling. A warmth on her chest, a stillness in her feet. Unknowing, she pressed her palms to the soil and sang, a wordless tune she didn't remember learning, but one she had always known. Lindiwe found her there an hour later, curled beneath the guava tree, fast asleep, humming in her dreams. She lifted the child gently, but Nyasha stirred and murmured, "I told the roots I'm staying." They said okay. Inspired by her drawings and moonlit song, the family decided to host a new kind of circle, the ceremony of small things, created by and for children. It wasn't publicized or formal, no announcements, no guests, just the Wildflower family, a few close friends, and a soft space beneath the name tree. Nyasha led it. She wore a crown of grass plaits and carried a bowl of red soil. She pointed to each person and gave them a work. "Jabari, you carry questions. Don't drop them. Amina, you stir hearts like you stir tea. Lindley, your voice makes fences fall. Bibi Layla, you plant stories even when your hands shake." Then she turned to the garden and said, "You grow because we grow, and we grow because you listen." She poured the red soil back into the earth and smiled. No applause, just the wind again, rustling soft as approval. That evening, Nyasha slipped a page from her sunflower journal under Amina and Lindiwe's pillow. It was a drawing of their house, but the house had roots. And inside, a small girl sat cross-legged, holding the sun in one hand and a watering can in the other. Below it, she had written, in her best spelling, "I am not small, I am just growing inward." And in that quiet chapter of resistance and rain, while adults wrote letters and politicians plotted land grabs, Nyasha bloomed in silence. Like all wildflowers, she reminded the world, you cannot pull up what grows beneath names. You cannot silence what grows inward first. By the time the bulldozers arrived, the sun was not yet fully risen. 5 heavy machines, county security, 1 young land surveyor who looked like he didn't want to be there. They rumbled down the hill like an approaching storm hyphenated in dust. Arrogance and impunity. The acquisition postponement had ended without ceremony. No official letters, no updated meetings, just engines and silence. Lindy saw the first glint of steel from the upper slope and rang the cowbell 3 times, the signal. Within minutes, the ridge stirred awake. Chico came barefoot, with arms full of signs painted on repurposed food crates. Mama Chipo walked slowly but firmly, her back straight, her eyes sharper than ever. Zawadi brought a drum. Layla tied her scarf like a head wrap, eyes blazing. Jabari and Nyasha stood by Amina, holding hands. They formed a line across the entrance to the Wildflower garden, not just protesters, but protectors. Each held something in their hand, a seed, a tool, a memory. Amina held the deed, the worn certificate that named her and Lindy Way as stewards of this land. The paper had faded, but their names had not. The first machine halted just 10 meters from the line. Its engine idled, growling low. The young driver looked uncertain. The county security officer stepped forward, sunglasses reflecting the morning light. You are unlawfully obstructing development operations approved by the county. This land is under appeal. The law gives us the right to remain while the matter is unresolved. Vamina. That process is backlogged. Orders are to proceed. Lindy Way stepped forward. Then you'll have to proceed through us. A tense silence followed. Then Mama Chepo stepped forward, raising both hands, and began to sing. It was a morning song, a freedom song. A song from the days when women buried umbilical cords in fields they later watched be burned. Mungu wa mashamba, tazama watoto wako, tunapanda si kwa faida, bali kwa uzima. God of the soil, see your children, we plant not for profit, but for life. One by one, others joined. Lindiwe, Zawadi, Chiku. Then Leela's voice trembled but present. The song filled the ridge, and the bulldozers waited. That night, journalists came, not just from Midimana, but from other distant cities. Even an international crew arrived, tipped off by a viral video of the songline. The footage of elders, children, and queer farmers standing in front of IAD, steel machines, lit up across news feeds. Amina was interviewed beneath the mean tree. Reporter, what are you asking for? Amina, land back. Respect, memory. Reporter, and if they come again? Amina, they will. But so will we. And we'll still be singing. 3 days after the standoff, a black SUV arrived quietly at dusk. From it stepped a woman in heels far too thin for the terrain, flanked by 2 aides. She introduced herself with a clipped accent. Deputy Minister Neri Wambua, Office of Land and Planning. She asked to speak with Amina and Lindy Way privately. They sat at the veranda table, Layla and the children nearby, watching. Let me be clear, I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to negotiate. We're not selling, Amina answered firmly. When listen, the developer has paused, yes, but not withdrawn. If you want to hold this land, you'll need to prove its value beyond sentiment, economic value. Lindy smiled slowly. Then come walk the garden. They took her through the rows. Mint, tomatoes, amaranth. Stories written on seed packets, medicinal teas pressed into fabric sachets, journals of healing shared by survivors of trauma, archives of dreams drawn in crayon by children who had never known safety before this soil. At the edge of the ridge, overlooking the valley, Lindy paused. You want economic value? Every wildflower here has more use than your golf course. Every story here grows medicine. Show me a villa that can do that. Minister Wambua said nothing, but she left with eyes changed. 1 week later, the county office announced a revised proposal. Kiunga Ridge would be declared a community healing and agricultural protection zone. The wildflower plots would remain untouched. The commercial development would be relocated downwind, downslope, far from ancestral roots. Victory was not total, but it was enough. It was survival, on their terms. That night, they returned to the fire pit. Chico brought a bottle of mango wine. Mamachipu brought roasted groundnuts. Jabari climbed into Lindiwe's lap. Nyasha curled up next to Armina, sketchbook open to a drawing of bulldozers turned into butterflies. And Layla at last asked, "May I plant a marigold tomorrow?" Amina nodded. "Plant it by the gate. Let it be the first thing they see." And so they sat, beneath stars older than every law and every machine, holding hands. Not just a family, not just a garden, a covenant. Chapter 10. Firelight and Footprints. The ridge felt different now. Not quieter, not louder, just deeper. Roots seemed thicker, leaves more vivid. Even the wind carried a new kind of weight, like it had decided to stay. Amina said it best. The land doesn't just hold us. It remembers who stayed. So they decided to honor it, to honor themselves. And the idea bloomed. Festival ya Mizizi. Festival of the Roots. Word spread fast. Within a week, banners were painted, drums tuned, and recipes passed across villages like old secrets. The Wildflower Healing Network called in its kin, sage sisters of Sambeke, who brought fermented pineapple brews and bone readings. The Wavuli Folk Choir, whose harmonies could crack stone. Masalani Herbalists Guild, with their traveling tent of salves, oils, and laughter. Farmers, dancers, storytellers, midwives, and queer elders from across 5 provinces arrived with gifts: dried mango, old songs, cowrie shells, and stories sewn into patchwork skirts. The ridge came alive. Children played tag between tomato beds. Nyasha led a garden tour in whispered tones, pointing out which plants talked too much. Jabari manned the root archive stall, with a clipboard and authority far beyond his years. Amina cooked barefoot, laughing. Layla sat on a straw mat, plaiting lavender into bracelets for strangers. Zawadi DJ'd under the guava tree, blending old tarab with futuristic amapiano. And Lindiwe, she moved through the crowd like sunlight on a river. But just below her ease, something churned. Earlier that week, a small envelope had arrived. Handwritten, no return address, postmarked from Revuco, the town she had fled almost 20 years ago. She hadn't opened it. It sat in her sketchbook like a thorn between pages, prickling each time she flipped past it. She told no one. Not yet. On the second night of the festival, a sacred fire was lit at the garden's edge, not for dancing or feasting, but for testimony. People shared moments they thought they'd never survive. The farmer spoke of losing her wife to illness and finding healing in a tomato vine. A midwife wept as she recounted the night she delivered a breech child with only moonlight and a prayer. A queer couple sang their love story, each verse a season of defiance. Then the circle fell quiet, and Lindiwe stood up. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't need to. I used to live in Rivoko. My name wasn't always Lindiwe, not fully. She swallowed, studying herself on Amina's gaze. A breeze stirred. Fire cracked softly. The night I met Amina, she gave me a bowl of soup and asked my name. I gave her a lie, but she gave me joy anyway. She paused, then pulled the envelope from her pocket. This letter is from my sister. I haven't spoken to her since the day I left. I think I'm not going to open it. Not because I'm afraid of the past, but because I finally know who I am here. She placed the envelope on the firewood, unopened, and let it burn. Not as rejection, as release. The final day of the festival was for planting. Each visitor was invited to sow one seed and say one word. Hope. Return. Belonging. Fire. Rain. When it was Lindy Wee's turn, she knelt beside Nyasha and Jabari, her hands in the soil. Mine is choice, because staying here, loving here, was one. She planted a climbing beam near the new welcome gate. Amina wrapped her arms around her from behind, whispered, "You were always the one who made things grow." As dusk fell, the festival ended not with music but with footprints. Each person dipped their bare feet in river clay and pressed them onto a long canvas roll stretched across the garden path. A living timeline, proof of resistance. The children danced across it. The elders walked slowly. Some wept, some laughed. Lindy Way walked last. When her foot touched the canvas, she paused, then stepped forward, and again, and again. And when she reached the end, she turned to see it. Her whole story, rooted, named, witnessed.
This is Queer Afrique, where African queer stories bloom boldly. Subscribe to witness more. Share the story and let's gather around the fire. Until next time.